having the serenity to accept what I could not change. And then the second sentence, the courage to be able to change what you can to help others.
In this episode of Wisdom, Wealth, and Wellness, host Jonathan Satovsky speaks with Gary Mendell, founder of Shatterproof, a leading national nonprofit organization dedicated to transforming addiction treatment. Gary shares how his son's struggle with addiction and tragic death inspired him to leave a successful hospitality career and create a national nonprofit.
Welcome to another episode of Wisdom, Wealth, and Wellness, where we explore the intersections of purpose, prosperity, and personal growth. I'm your host, Jonathan Satovsky, and today it's an extreme honor to be speaking with Gary Mendell, someone who I've known for over a decade, a friend, an entrepreneur, a visionary entrepreneur, and more importantly, a compassionate change maker, which we'll get into. But he's the founder and CEO of Shatterproof, a national nonprofit dedicated to reversing the addiction crisis in the United States. Before Shatterproof, tying it together, he built a remarkable career in the hospitality industry. He's co-founded HEI Hotel and Resorts in 1985, which became one of the fastest growing hotel investment firms in the United States. So this podcast is going to get a little deep and get a little heavy. So let's start with your early years of just entrepreneurship in general, because that's how we met in an entrepreneurial organization. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about sort of your professional upbringing of starting a hotel industry, and you've been amazingly successful. I'd love to hear just a little color on your early career and the business that you built as a starting point.
Sure. So Jonathan, thank you. Growing up, my dad was a partner and managed a small fast food restaurant. So I grew up working at his restaurant, cleaning dishes and cooking and et cetera, et cetera. Went to hotel and restaurant administration for college is what I studied, and started a hotel company with my brother in our mid to late 20s out of our basement, and grew the company, as you mentioned, into one of the largest hotel investment companies in the United States, and grew my career that way entrepreneurially.
Amazing. So you had great success, and after this amazing career, as often happens, life doesn't go in a straight line. There were some challenges that happened in your family that sort of led to the start of Shatterproof. Maybe you can give a little background as to the origins and how this all took place, because it's really a story that I think in the realm of
Sure.
social media and everyone sort of TikToking, and you don't really know what's going on with the mental health of our population in general. And I think your family had a lot of roots that has catalyzed your next chapter. So maybe you can give a little color.
So as I mentioned, I was building my hotel company and in partners with my brother and obviously many other people, and raising my family in a small town in Connecticut. And my older son, Brian, in his first year of high school, started to experiment with alcohol, and that led to him becoming addicted, and which led to my son, Brian, over the next 8 years, going to 8 different treatment programs across the country and trying to do better from what he was dealing with. And each time he would go to treatment, he would do well. And then when he would get out, and within 2 or 3 or 4 months, he would usually relapse. And that led to his last treatment program, where he was doing really well. And he finally got to the point where he was 1 year substance free, which was wonderful. And I celebrated that weekend with him. And then 5 weeks later, I was woken up in the middle of the night and told that my son had just died. He was 25 years old, and he hadn't used a substance in 13 months. And equally tragic, Jonathan, and for all those listening, it wasn't just addiction or substance use disorder that took my son's life. It was the feeling of shame he had every morning when he opened his eyes, of all day long feeling like an outcast, whether it be with work or friends or back in college, that caused him to wake up that morning, research suicide notes, write a note of his own, and take his own life alone. And it obviously doesn't get much worse as a father. And in the weeks that followed, the only thing really that was keeping me alive, frankly, was focusing on the serenity prayer. Having the serenity to accept what I could not change. And then the second sentence, the courage to be able to change what you can to help others. And I began to focus on, with Brian in my heart, what could be done to help others. So I got back into the office of my hotel company about 2 months after my son passed away, called the top team in the office and said, "You've been doing a great job running the business for the last few months. I'm going to take 3 more months off and I'm going to travel the country, seeing what I can do to help others." And that's what I did. And when I got back after 3 months, there was one thing there were 5 things that I wrote on a piece of paper. How big this medical condition was. 1/4 of our country has its disease. 3rd largest cause of death in the country. It was big. Second thing I wrote was children. I learned that 8 out of 10 of those with a substance use disorder, i.e. addiction, had developed the medical condition before their 18th birthday. Not 100%, but 80%. But then I wrote number 3, which changed everything. I put tragic. And when I wrote that word, it was not because my son had died. That's not what I was thinking of when I wrote it. It was because I learned that our federal government had provided about $20 billion in funding to researchers all across the country in the previous 2 decades. And those researchers had successfully used that funding and created wonderful bodies of knowledge. Knowledge that had proven through randomly controlled trials, without any doubt, if our society and our families and our healthcare system followed certain protocols, approximately 30% less of our loved ones would use substances and develop this medical condition. And a second body of knowledge that had proven, again, without any doubt, randomly controlled trials, if our treatment system followed certain protocols, those with this medical condition would recover at the same success rate as those with other chronic illnesses, such as diabetes and heart disease. But I wrote the word tragic because I learned that all this information was buried in medical journals, and hardly any of it was being implemented. Information that could have saved my son's life, either through prevention or treatment, but way beyond my son, literally millions of others, and was just not being used. And then I asked myself why. Well, for every medical condition in this country, there was one well-funded national nonprofit leading the fight to protect our families and ensuring that proven research was being utilized. American Cancer Society, American Heart Association, Alzheimer's Association, etc. And no such organization existed on any scale and scope for this medical condition like there was for the others. And I asked myself why. And I wrote number 5, shame and stigma. I could have walked into any restaurant in America in 2012 and said, "I have a charity for addiction. Would you donate $1?" people would have looked at me like I had 6 heads. Are you kidding me? Donate $1 to a charity for addiction? Just throw them in jail. It's not a charitable cause. But I had learned, reading all this research, and at 3 months, this was a medical condition, just like the others. And we could change this. So that's when I decided to leave my business and spent 1.5 years developing a business plan to launch a national nonprofit like there was for all the other major medical conditions in this country. And then we launched in the fall of 2013. That was the formation of Shatterproof.
Bravo. Bravo to you. And I probably don't have the precise words to understand the experience you went through, but the ability to be able to harness and turn it into a contribution impact many people's lives is mind-blowing. Can you take us through the next chapter of how Shatterproof bridges the gap from research and ideation to support for families that might
absolutely
be afflicted with this challenge?
Absolutely.
And I imagine there must be families known and unknown, right? There's a lot of families that may even not want to confront it, right?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, we were formed with a vision that our society would look this disease straight in the eye, prevent it and treat it, and provide recovery supports for this medical condition, just like any other disease, without any shame or stigma. And with 3 founding criteria underneath that vision. Number 1, everything that we do would be based on proven research. It's not what I think. It's not what you think. If there's randomly controlled trials, it's recommended by the HHS or the CDC or the FDA, we're behind it. And if it's not, we can't, we won't. And it's in our name, proof. Everything is based on research. Shatterproof. Number 2, everything we do, everything, is not only helping people today, but it's also catalyzing partnerships to change the system forever, for future generations, for our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, future generations. And number 3, we're running Shatterproof like a business with metrics, KPIs. We're running it like a well-run business. Everything we look at is looked at return on donated dollars for impact. So that's the 3 founding criteria. Skipping forward and not going through the evolution, where we are today is 3 main pillars of work. Number 1, transforming the treatment system in the United States. Number 2, ending shame and stigma. And number 3, educating and empowering our families with the information they need to protect their loved ones, either prevention, treatment, or recovery supports, or educating and empowering families about Shatterproof. So if they want to help others, they can join with us to do so in so many different ways.
Right,
and all 3 principles, all 3 key pillars are backed up. We have the leading public policy team in the country, which in the last 10 years has gotten 48 laws passed in 26 states, 5 federal bills that is backing up each of those 3 things, a pillar of work and supporting their growth and their impact.
Amazing. Just trying to think in a practical standpoint, right? I live in a community,
right?
And there's many teenage children that are going through what your son had gone through, that are experimenting with alcohol, drugs, like all sorts of things. And to your point about shame and my perception is that both the children and the parents turn a blind eye of not thinking that it's just that's just part of the social norm. So how do we take what you're doing, and to your point about like eliminating the stigma, how do you raise the level of awareness that this is no joke? I mean, this is like both for the kids and the parents to be educated and bridge the gap, because what you're doing as an organization is amazing, but how does it get to the families and the communities around the country, you know?
Absolutely. Well, our 3 pillars of work and supporting them, all our policy work, they're not independent. It's one flywheel, all 4 of those things. They all work together, right? So in answer to your question, let's go a little deeper, right? So let's talk about someone with this medical condition, right? Let's say a teenager experiments with drugs. 10 kids go in the woods after school one day. They all try beer or wine, and 2 of them say, that didn't taste very good. I'm not going to do it again. 6 of them say, or 7 of them say, excuse me, that felt pretty good. I'll try it a month from now. And 1 of the 10, it connected in some way that they wanted to use it again the next day and the next day.
Chemically, it hit them in a way.
Yeah, they could have had anxiety, like we all had in high school sports, where you get butterflies before a football game. Maybe they had anxiety 24 hours a day, and the beer made them feel better. Maybe they had some depression, where maybe something made them feel better. Maybe genetically they have addiction in their family, but for some reason they became addicted. So now let's get someone to treatment like that. If they had diabetes, they would go to their primary care doctor, and they would help them along to get treatment. So are they going to ask for treatment? Well, let's look at some statistics. If you have diabetes or heart disease or a typical chronic illness, about 75% of those with this illness, each of these illnesses, get treated. About 25% don't, in round numbers. And then those who get treated, 100% of them, when they do get treated on protocols that have randomly controlled trials behind them, proving it improves outcomes. 100%. Because everyone treating them is a board certified primary doctor, became board certified in a specialty, and so everyone is being treated based on the proven science. For this disease, less than 25% of those with this medical condition go to treatment, not 75%. And of those being treated, less than 25% are treated with protocols based on science. So 25 times 25 is like 6%. Compared to 75% for the other diseases. So this ties together transforming the addiction treatment system and reducing shame and stigma and educating and empowering. All 3 work together, and the policy work. So how do we take that situation and improve it? Number 1, we need to reduce the shame and the stigma so more people will not be ashamed of going to treatment. More people will feel like...
Pause there for a moment, only because, and I don't mean to, throw off your train of thought, but I've had several families, very close friends, very successful, look like vibrant families, have a child that needed to get into treatment. And I think actually in both conditions, they actually had to trick the child into treatment. Oh, Correct. We're going to go on vacation. And then they basically did a handoff. Is that is that more prevalent than not, because the kid doesn't want to acknowledge the challenge and it takes a lot of courage on the parents' part? Is that a more frequent way to get it started? I'm just curious.
I'm not going to use more frequent. It's one of the ways to get it started.
Yeah.
The other ways are interventions, which is similar, where the certain members of the family and friends get together with the person and try to convince them to want to go to treatment.
Right.
It depends on the age of the person to treatment. Sometimes it's best to get that person with a therapist who can work with that person over time to get them to want to go to treatment. There's a variety of ways, but it's very common. I'm not going to say any one of the ways are common because there's a variety of ways to get someone to want to go to treatment, but it's very common that people with this medical condition do not want to go to treatment.
Right. Okay. So now let's get to the next step. Now you get them to treatment. However, you get them to some facility. And as you mentioned,
Correct.
Your son went to 8 different facilities, and that's not, from my understanding, that's actually not uncommon. It's uncommon for someone to go.
That's not uncommon. So let's talk about pillar number one.
It's hard to find the right facility. If you find the right facility, it may not be the right fit, and the kids bounce around. So how do you accelerate the process? What are the things that you've been doing to try to help people accelerate the process?
So I could spend a lot of time on each of our pillars of work. Let's just dig into one and answer your question. Let's look at pillar one. How do we transform the treatment system? So instead of less than 1 in 4 who go to treatment, get treatment based on science-based protocols, to get that to 100% like any other medical condition. We have 5 pieces, 5 components of transforming the treatment system in the United States. Number one, when I looked at it 10 years ago, there was no national standard of care for the treatment of addiction like any other medical condition. It didn't exist. We work with leading researchers in the field, and we published the Shatterproof National Principles of Care, which are the 8 most important things related to treatment in the 80-20 rule that improve outcomes the most. Not 100 things. These are the most important 8. That's the National Principles of Care, and now they're adopted by health insurers representing more than half insured members in the United States. So that's number one. Once we have the national standard of care, how do we get it implemented? Well, if we gather data from treatment programs and we show which treatment programs are following which one of these evidence-based practices, and we publish it on a free public site, people can looking for treatment for themselves or a family member can see which treatment programs are following which evidence-based practices and shift demand to the ones that are following most evidence-based practices. And then that's helping people today. But then to change the system forever, if we can then partner with health insurers and license them the data we're collecting to show them which providers are following the most evidence-based practices and which ones are not, they can use that data to build better networks. And they can go to the providers that are not following the evidence-based practices, coach them up to do so or not, take them out of their other insured network. It also helps them locate providers that are not in their network that should be because they're following most of the evidence-based practices. So that is a second driver, shifting supply and demand, helping people today, but licensing it to health insurers. We also give it to states so they can understand which evidence-based practices are less being used, which ones more, and which policies can help change that, and to use it for Medicaid. So again, changing the system together to all of us forming these partnerships to do so. So that's bullet point number 2, gathering the data. And we have something on our website. If someone goes to our website and says find treatment in the top right of our website, it'll take them to treatmentatlas.org. And that is something we launched in 2020, which is exactly what I just talked about. That was launched in 6 states, representing 13% of the United States population. It then went to 10 states, to 12 states, to 14 states, and now we're in 14 states representing 45% of the United States population because it's mostly in larger states. And we're talking to 2 or 3 other states right now to expand further. So that's up and running. People can go to treatmentatlas.org. It's a free consumer site, and it helps them locate treatment programs that are most appropriate for their loved one or themselves. The third component is what level of care do they need? We all get calls all the time. We all get calls from friends. I have a son or daughter addicted. Can you find me a 28-day program to send them to? Everyone thinks 28 days, 28 days, 28 days, because that's what we've been taught as we grew up. Not taught. I hardly knew about this, but we all think that culturally. But there's outpatient programs that for certain people could be better. Some people, it's best to have residential. Some people, outpatient is better while they continue their life. Depends on the circumstances. So we reached out to the American Society of Addiction Medicine, which has 3 decades of science on what level of care someone needs. And I went to them and said, you have a very comprehensive assessment to determine what level of care a patient needs, 12 levels of care. Can you work with me and let's develop a consumer-friendly, just less than 12 questions, less than 10 minutes, and get people just down one of 2 avenues, outpatient or residential. And then once they get there, then they can get the comprehensive assessment of the American Society of Addiction Medicine delivered by a practitioner to a patient
Brilliant.
to titrate their care. They agreed. We spent 1.5 years developing it together. It was finished in June of 2020. Atlas launched in July of 2020. We put the 2 together. So now someone goes to Treatment Atlas. They take a 10-question assessment. They immediately get a recommendation. Not only do you need outpatient or residential or whatever you need based on how you answered those questions, but here's what services you need. Based on how you answer those questions, you also need mental health services, or also need medications for alcohol use disorder or opioid use disorder. And then we only show them a list of the treatment programs that fit that criteria, so it narrows that list. And then that person searching for treatment could also filter by other criteria that's important to them. Adult or adolescent, male or female, LGBTQ or not. I want to have my cell phone with me or not. All these other criteria, and then it shrinks the list even further.
You're such a gift in the sense that you're taking a lot. I love the logic. The information
it's a no-brainer.
The information is there. Why are we not just making the information digestible for the people that need it? So, in that vein, in working with lawmakers and healthcare systems, has it surprised you in trying to affect change at the policy level, or has it been easy? Are people like, let's do it,
It's ups and downs. It's not as easy as it should be. But I've met so many wonderful people in the big health insurers, big and small health insurers around this country, wonderful people working in their behavioral health departments that have partnered with us, wonderful people in the behavioral health departments in state agencies, wonderful people in community-based organizations who help us get the word out. Wonderful people in companies. Companies have partnered with us to get it to their employees. We developed an education program. It's 9 lessons of 5 minutes each that we partner with companies to get it out to their employees, to educate them on both prevention, treatment, recovery, stigma reduction, support systems. And we launched it with JP Morgan Chase 5 years ago. That was the first company. And now we're in about 75 companies across the country giving out to their employees. Actually, it's probably more than that in the last couple months. That gets this program out to their employees to educate them. And these aren't just employees who have it in their families. This could be employees who are parents who have 8 and 10 years old that want to learn about prevention.
I just, when you brought up JP Morgan, it reminds me of a very dear friend of mine who deals in financial literacy and youth, had given a speech post-financial crisis, post-2009 financial crisis at, I think it was Morgan Stanley, to a group of wives of executives. I want to say might have been a dozen. The story eludes me because it was some time back. But I think 8 of them were widowed. Eight of the these are, I believe, suicide above 45-year-old males is one of the fastest or the highest mortality issues in our country. And 8 of 10 of the women in the room had lost their husbands to suicide, and they were dealing with, it might not have been addiction, but mental health, it could have been a combination. So I think to your point about stigmas, it's like these corners that no one wants to talk about whether mental health or chemistry. And it's just such a brave, courageous, beautiful thing that you've been able to turn your pain into contribution in the world. I know we're running out of time, and this is, I'm not doing justice to end
Sure.
the conversation
Okay.
at any level. I guess I would ask, from a leadership standpoint, how you can inspire potentially 10, 30,000, million, billion listeners that might tune into this, that hear this, of how they can take some pain in their lives, something that they've seen that personally infected their ecosystem. And you're so disciplined, it sounds, in your actions. How can you give people the courage and motivation to take whatever pain they're confronted with and realize that they're not too small to make a difference?
Absolutely. No one is too small to make a difference. Anybody listening to this and interested, just go to shatterproof.org. And on the top of the website, there's a section about how to get involved as a volunteer, as a donor, as an ambassador, or in any way that you're comfortable with, spreading the word. If you know anybody looking for treatment, hit the Find Treatment button, and you can go to treatmentatlas.org in the 14 states that we're in and learn about the treatment system. In our education section, in the Learn section, there's information about prevention, treatment, recovery. If you're in human resources, you want to help your employees, reach out to us. We have a corporate team that's talking to companies all the time and engaging. I have meetings coming up next month with several Wall Street firms to continue what JP Morgan Chase started. We have 6 walks in major cities where we bring together thousands of people. People can attend our walk.
The repelling event was pretty amazing.
That was
you got to talk
wonderful.
about that. That was really amazing.
We used to rappel off of buildings, and it was a great way. Yeah, we started with events where people rappelled off of buildings, and we'd have about 100 people going, two to 3 people every 10 minutes down a building, and it would go all day. And then we wanted to supplement that where we can bring in thousands, not hundreds, at our walks. And once we started the walks, they were so powerful, having thousands of people there together over a 2 or 3 hour period versus 100 people over 8-hour day, that we stopped doing the rappelling, although we may bring it back because people keep asking about it. But it's so powerful. I had someone come up to me at our we have a golf event in Connecticut every year, and someone came up to me and introduced himself, and he said, "Gary, I could just not stop using drugs in my 20s. And then a few years ago," he said, "I'm now 33, but a few years ago, one of my friends convinced me to go to your Shatterproof walk in New York City, which is on a Saturday or Sunday morning." And he said, "It was the first time in my adult life that I felt accepted and respected." And he said 3 days later, after that walk, was the last time I ever used a substance.
Wow.
It's those stories. The walk in New York City last year, I had some remarks. I was walking off the stage, and a woman came up to me as I got onto the last step on the pavement. She came up to me and she hugged me and she cried. And she said, "Gary, I used Treatment Atlas to find the right treatment program for my son, and Treatment Atlas saved my son's life.
Wow.
I cannot thank you enough."
Oh.
And she just cried and hugged me. It's these stories. There's one side of me that knows we're going to be helping millions as these platforms grow, and we haven't even touched upon the stigma program that's spreading across the country, and so many things that are spreading across the country, but it's also these individual stories one-on-one. So in answer to your question, anybody listening, whether you have this in your family or not, whether you want to possibly prevent others from developing this disease, you have young children, or you have someone in your family that has it, or anyone in any way, shape, or form, or you're working at a company and you want to get your company involved, just reach out to Shatterproof through a variety of ways on our website at shatterproof.org.
Brilliant. Thank you. I mean, it's been beyond a privilege to spend time with you today. So leave one last question is, what piece of wisdom would you share with families or leaders that are navigating personal loss, business challenges, both, or a crisis in their life? What's one
Sure.
key takeaway that can light a fire for people?
Well, there's two takeaways, whether if you've had a loss or you have a crisis. If you've had a loss, take care of yourself after the loss, which I did, and take your life any way you want to take it. If you want to get involved and help others and your son or daughters or family or loved one's memory, do so in any way you want. If you want to reach out to us to find ways to work with us, great. If you want to reach out to us to find ways to work with others or want advice, feel free to do so. And we can go on and on about that. If you're in crisis, I can advise you, anyone, that there is a lot of proven research buried in medical journals on how to help someone get into treatment, find the right treatment program, i.e. treatment atlas, and provide recovery supports. And go onto the Atlas website and learn about it. Reach out to us if you have questions. I can't look anybody in the eye and say we could eliminate this medical condition tomorrow. But I can look anybody in the eye and say there is proven research that can significantly reduce the number of our loved ones who are impacted by this. And a lot of this information is on our website.
The world is lucky to have Gary, and I'm lucky to know you, and thank you for devoting your
Jonathan,
energy.
let me just say the world is lucky to have me and so many others who are helping us. I'm not alone. There are so many companies, people, community-based organizations, state-based organizations that are helping with us, health insurers. We're doing this together.
Well, everybody go to shatterproof.org and do what you can, chip in $1, time, energy, resources. I'm sure you and someone in your ecosystem is going to need you at some point in time. So educate yourself. And thank you again, Gary, for graciously spending the time with us. And we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you for having me. Thank you all for listening.
I'll end. Just remember to subscribe free to Wisdom, Wealth, and Wellness podcasts, and open to suggestions as we explore very wide-ranging topics, not just about money, but about wealth. Is you have 100 problems, and when you have a health crisis, you got one problem. So, Gary's brought a lot of wisdom to us today, and I'm just trying to shine the light on some people that can contribute in the world, and he's been a massive contributor. So. Thanks again for listening, and all shows are also on satovsky.com under podcasts, and have a wonderful day.
At Satovsky Asset Management, we believe refined wealth deserves refined service. As fiduciaries, our mission is to protect and grow your wealth through disciplined advice, hyper-personal service, and multi-generational trust. Our clients stay because we never oversell. We simply over-deliver.